Hi, I'm Dr. Cheryl Bothwell, and welcome to the Wellness Table, where you can expect conversation about real food for real people. I want you to walk away from each episode feeling empowered and ready to feel good. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Wellness Table. Hi, I'm Dr. Cheryl, and I'm here with my producer, Donna. Hey, Donna.
Hi, Cheryl. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Just living the summer dream. We're kind of wrapping down summer. It's so hot. So I'm finding myself a little bit shockingly more lazy.
Oh,
Like
that heat does that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right. And I always like getting out and doing walks and stuff. And I find myself like, I think I'm going to sit in the air conditioning all day. How is Blueberry?
Blueberry's awesome. She's almost 20 pounds. So she was at the vet yesterday, and I can't wait till I can start taking her on walks and getting out once she's properly immunized. So she's just pretty young for that, but she's doing super good, growing super fast, and absolutely love her. Super fun. Aww. So I can't wait till I can just get her out there and, take her out and walk around. But she hates the heat. So I find that interesting, and I'm hearing standard poodles hate heat. So anyway, I don't mind.
Maybe I'm a standard poodle.
I know.
Okay. Cheryl, I wanted to talk to you. We've been talking a little bit about this. I know you've been talking about it on your Instagram stories and on your socials about, speaking of energy, we have a little bit of an epidemic here in this world, in this 2023 world, and I have proof of it in my own home because I do have kids. So you brought up this article that is talking all about the Prime energy drinks, which are by influencer who's now a huge entrepreneur, huge YouTuber, Logan Paul. And He and his team came up with these energy drinks. They're called Prime. And there's so many flavors, and there's such a huge variety. And I just told you when I was traveling around the world this summer. Oh, you have them in front of you. All right. Yeah. If you are not watching YouTube, you got to watch YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're everywhere. I mean, I'm telling you, in the smallest little kiosk right outside of the like Parthenon or whatever, you're finding Prime energy drinks. Yeah. So it's in the news right now. What are we seeing about Prime energy drinks? Do you want to kind of go over these articles that we're seeing, or?
Yeah, I was just really amazed when I was looking at, what's current, and I began to see that, there's this young student that had a cardiac episode after drinking, and they described it as the cult energy drink. I was interested with that. And I had never tried Prime, so I'm coming into this a little bit not having young kids, and our sons talked about it a little bit, like, hey, have you seen Prime and things like that? And I just looked at it as another Gatorade sports drink. So I really hadn't gotten into it at all. So this really prompted me when I see this cardiac episode, and the stomach needs to be pumped. And now we start to see then another article like the following day where the New York City mayor is looking at pulling it from the shelves of stores, major grocery stores, and especially the energy drink version of it. And so that just got my attention. And so I thought, well, I've got to go buy it, see what it looks like. And what I was hearing that was really interesting, Donna, is that I guess it's been in some areas you can trade a container of the Energy Prime, and it's like a Bitcoin, you can trade it for something else, So I was like, well, this is like becoming, there's a low supply of it and being able to meet the supply. And I saw 100 million cans have been produced, and it's only been out in the last year is what I'm reading. So I'm like, this is a rage. I wonder what it's about. And that's what I wanted to explore today. I thought that's a great topic for our podcast because I figured parents with kids in school, I've even talked to another one of our team members that her kids went to camp, and it was all the camp and the talk of the even young children. So very interesting. But one of the things I saw, because I started to look at what's the ingredients. I mean, for me, I immediately go to what would cause cardiac arrest? And we immediately start to think, what was the caffeine? Was there too much caffeine? What about the sugar? And so that's what I explored. And what I found in a nutshell was I'm looking at the ingredients and I'm like, especially on like the Prime Hydration, it's like coconut water. And I'm looking at electrolytes and I'm thinking, that's really interesting. And so I also went to the Instagram to see what Logan Paul, how they marketed it, because then I heard the negative is being marketed to children. And so then I wanted to explore the Prime Energy. So I went to our grocery store, and interesting, Donna, here's a whole shelf of the Prime Hydration, and the whole section for Prime Energy is empty. They've pulled it in our just local Napa Valley, pulled it from the shelf. So I'm like, it's a real thing. And they're pulling the energies, the Prime Energy drinks. And I'm looking at them and I'm seeing 200 milligrams of caffeine in them and no added sugar. The only sugar that's in it, there's 2 grams of carbohydrate. It's coming from the coconut. So there's no added sugar. And then I'm looking at how it says not recommended for children under the age of 18. So I was just curious, first of all, that how much did this child drink? Where did they get it? 200 milligrams, how many milligrams of caffeine a day is okay for a child? And when you look at it, I don't think we really recommend for children to drink caffeine because we're trying to get them to be focused. And we feel like, I read an article that children, psychologists saying children have enough energy. They don't need caffeine, that type of thing. I think some kids might disagree because they may feel that, they need, they're tired or they're not getting enough sleep. But clearly it's a rage. I think it's bottled really beautifully. But I think the whole idea is that this is appealing to kids above, like when my other son was in high school, it was all about Red Bull. And I was really concerned about Red Bull. And so my question for this weekend, as I was exploring it, was why did Prime get nailed? There's a cardiac event, 200 milligrams of caffeine. Maybe they had 2 of them. I don't know. But that could be a problem. And I can see where teachers would not want this coming to school. The question was, should it be banned? And would I recommend it? I mean, Donna, would you want your kids to have, it's low in sugar. I think that was their goal. They wanted to have a lower sugar option. And we worry about our kids getting too much sugar. That can make them hyper, right? And now we add caffeine to it. And what does a parent think about letting our kids have Mountain Dew? Let's think about all caffeine.
I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so they're young. I'm not ever letting them drink coffee. Like, we don't go to Starbucks and get them a coffee drink. They can have a couple sips maybe of a Coke or a Diet Coke on vacation. That's kind of the most caffeine they've ever had. The Prime that I purchase for them is always the hydration one. They have 2 kinds, right? They have Prime Hydration, which essentially is a Gatorade, but healthier, actually, believe it or not. When you look at the ingredients, it's a lot less added ingredients. So that's the one I get because they play sports, and I figure if they're gonna drink a hydration drink, this is kind of what they choose. I would never buy them the energy drink. I have 2 boys. Why do I need? The only time they actually ever need the energy is at 7 a.m. when I'm waking them up for school.
That's what
the
I was
rest of the day,
about.
no.
Yeah. And that's the main time everybody wants their caffeine, right? It's that morning cup of joe kind of a thing.
But the problem here, Cheryl, and that's probably what a lot of this is this influence, because it's coming from these influencers, and had, Pepsi come out with this drink and it was just another drink on the shelves, I don't think it would have ever sparked the frenzy that it did when your favorite, YouTuber, which is really movie stars for these kids. They're obsessed with their YouTubers. Now they're posting about it. You want to be a part of the cool kids.
Yep. It's really interesting to see how influencers have a major influence on what we consume, what we do. It's no different than television ads of the past, but now that's on steroids kind of, as we look at what, when they have, I saw something that said they had 100 million viewers, but when I was looking at their Instagram, I was seeing more like 30 million, but whatever it is, they have a lot of viewers. But I wanted to say that I think that you're right. When somebody's creating something and they're promoting it on their platform, that it's going to, and they're really cool. And these are, people that are, what are they? I think I'm trying to think if they're boxers or something like that, but they're athletes and using this. Then I think the idea too is that I can get muscle like that, or I can look like that, or I can be tough like that, or I can be cool like that. But ultimately at the end of the day, if we look at the hydration, you nailed it on there. Their goal was, and I saw their ad, there's Gatorade, here's Prime Hydration. It's coconut water. It comes with electrolytes. It does not have caffeine. It doesn't have any added sugar. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, it must taste bad. I even looked at some of the taste tests, like Gordon Ramsay did a taste test. It's really everybody's looking at it right now. So I did a taste test and I found it to be actually acceptable like that. I'm not a Gatorade fan. So I'm a Prime Hydration, I would recommend it above Gatorade at this point from what I've seen, which is surprising. And then when it comes to the Prime Energy, though, I think I just bucket it when it just comes to straight up nutrition and what are the risks, which is what my expertise would be, not so much the rage or why someone's preferring it over anything else. I just lined it up against other energy drinks. And what I found was interesting is that Red Bull has a label that's just safer looking. It's like they have sugar in their drink and they have an 8-ounce beverage. So some of the articles were saying that Red Bull has 30 or 40 milligrams of caffeine. I'm seeing that if you had 12 ounces to 12 ounces, there's about 140, 150 milligrams of caffeine in a Red Bull of the same ounces, because you've got to look ounce to ounce. And they do make a 12-ounce can and a 20-ounce can and an 8-ounce can. But they also come with the sugar. So you're getting 40, 50 milligrams or grams, of sugar with your 140, 150 milligrams of caffeine. So that's when I start looking at like that combination. Now let's put sugar and caffeine together. And that's like, I always say that's a little bit like legal cocaine. It really can actually be a psychostimulant. And I find that would be more concerning. And I was screaming that about Red Bull when my son was in high school several years ago. And it was like, they're all just drinking Red Bull and we never got this kind of hype. And I think, like you said, it's the influencer, it's the difference, it's the 100 million cans. But I would say, let's look at all the energy drinks, Donna, and let's think about how are we hydrating? How do we have our kids safe when they're doing sports and make sure that they're getting the hydration that they need and that they love, how do we motivate them to drink more, have a beverage that they like? And I'm thinking Prime Hydration would be something I would let my kids, if they loved it, I'd let them drink it because it might get them to drink more than even plain water, which is always awesome. But sometimes if it's over 85 degrees and it's super hot or even more humid and our kids are playing sports, a little tiny touch, I've seen this in some of the research of the electrolyte, a little bit of sodium even, it will get them to drink more than and they'll absorb better the hydration if they're sweating a lot. So there is a benefit to some sports drinks at extreme heat and extreme sports. But most of the time, we recommend water. And we're talking the extreme. So I don't think anybody really needs it unless we use that word extreme, like very hot. And let's say they're out playing soccer and they're out doing something super hot, like then with a lot of sweat. That's when we really want to look at electrolytes. Otherwise, it's not like we need electrolytes as long as we've been eating that day. So that's my general, let's think about energy drinks and Red Bull and Monster and some of these. And what we're finding is that kids really like the feel of caffeine, and so do adults. And so we're all kind of fans of caffeine at some level, and we all like it combined with sugar. So I find it to be popular. It's not like kids are just totally wanting some crazy thing or some crazy flavor that is, I wonder why they like it. So I would just say in general, how can we make sure we get hydrated? How can we balance the hydration and the flavor and keep our kids safe? And should they ban it from schools? I mean, how would you vote to ban it from your kid's school? How far would you take it, Donna?
Well, I don't think it should be served at schools. To me, it doesn't it doesn't really match in my brain with something that should be at school. The hydration is a total different boat. I'm okay with that. I really am okay with buying a whole case of that and letting them have
The
one
prime
after
hydration. Yeah.
the hydration one,
Yeah.
which is like a healthier Gatorade, like I
Yep.
said. That I'm okay with. But anything energy, number one, I'm sure parents are not aware of how much they're actually drinking, if anything, because I don't think any parent is dying to give their kid a lot of caffeine. That doesn't
Right.
compute to me. Unless maybe you're 16, 17 years old and you're
Right.
kind of at the driving age already. I remember when I was used to drive to high school, junior, senior year, I would always stop at Coffee Bean, which is our local, it was a local coffee shop. And I drank probably way too much caffeine at that age, but I think it's a little bit more understandable in your high teens.
Yeah.
But those young kids, they don't have really a sense, and this is probably, maybe you can talk about this, like they don't really know what their body can handle until it's too late. That's why
Right.
they get sick off ice cream, it's like eating too much cake and then they have a tummy ache. They're kind of almost impulsive with that.
Right.
And I can see very easily my 8-year-old, completely pounding a Prime energy drink without even thinking twice about it like he would, a Sprite.
Yeah. Just thinking they're drinking water or anything.
Yeah, it tastes good.
Yeah, it definitely has. For kids, they're so much smaller. And, caffeine dehydrates the body as well. And so does sugar. So in some ways, you feel like you're hydrating if you think about the energy drink. And are we really getting as much hydration as we think? But I think those short-term side effects, when we start to see that, what is caffeine, and it's a vasodilator, and there's a bronchodilator, and there's a muscle relaxant, and it can have a medicinal effect for adults. But the concern we have is that, when we talk about caffeine and the types of caffeine, the caffeine that when you see caffeine on the label of the container, like you don't see it on the hydration, but when you actually see caffeine on the label, it's a synthetic caffeine. And so the natural caffeine, sometimes we even call it the organic caffeine, coming from the coffee bean, coming from the tea, coming naturally from there's a small amount in the cocoa bean. We only have to put, for instance, green tea on the label. So you wouldn't have to list the milligrams of caffeine. So you could be giving sources of, like V8 does this with their green tea with a lot of different vegetables and fruits. And it's a pick-me-up, it's got that little bit, but they're using a natural caffeine. So I think that's another discussion, Donna, that we think about. And there's two things here that I really want to talk about today, and that is the caffeine, the type of caffeine, how much is safe? Is it okay? What about adults as well? And then also the sugar and the sugar beverages that we get from sodas and from many beverages that we're not even realizing have a lot of added sugar. And so
let's get started with let's get started with the caffeine topic.
Okay.
What is the healthy amount of caffeine, and what is the range there, and what should we do about it?
When I'm looking at what does everyone recommend, I just was like, what's the adult dose? And I'm seeing pretty consistently with our dietary guidelines for Americans, it's 400 milligrams for adults. And they've listed for children from 12 to 18. They don't recommend it under 18, but a max of 100 milligrams of caffeine per day. And again, these are sort of those recommended, like what's the amount for adults when we start to see some of the benefits of it, where it then turns into the harm. And so those are the actual numbers. Now, I find that to be confusing. I'm just going to say that I think it depends on caffeine's super personal. Like if you think about different cultures, and now I'm moving away into just all people, adults and everyone, not just children now in this conversation about caffeine. But have you noticed there's like different cultures that have coffee is like in Germany. If you think about where do I travel that it's all the greatest coffee? I even think of Oregon and Portland, and I lived up there, and it's like, I think it's the home of Starbucks, but it's like coffee is the thing.
Europe, kind of anywhere in Europe or in
Yeah.
Spain. I mean, there's so much culture around the coffee. You're right.
Exactly. And so then I'm thinking that's really interesting because, having a cup of coffee. Well, I grew up very much, my mom from New York, upstate New York, but family very English, and it's tea. My grandma would always say, I'm not so much into the coffee, always having tea. So I just remember tea growing up, my mom having tea. And I just thought it was kind of interesting that my dad was the coffee drinker, Michigan farmer, having the coffee, and my mom's having the tea. And I find people have a preference. And I began to explore that a little bit and to see that, caffeine can come from a natural source. And even between tea and coffee, I think there's a different response. But one thing for sure is when we find it natural, it has a slower spike and it has a more stable energy level to most people. And so I think that's why the natural occurring caffeine in a plant is doesn't give us the same type of spike and drop that we might get from a synthetic caffeine, which we actually create in the lab. And I was a little bit surprised because I've never really studied how do we make synthetic caffeine? And this is just kind of a crazy thing, but I didn't realize it started in World War II with Hitler looking for something to replace methamphetamine to get his soldiers stimulated and to be able to not just something that was cheap and easy in a powder to take out into battle and give soldiers energy. And I'm looking at it. And so they start with ammonia. And how do they take this chemical and move it into this theophylline type structure, which is a xanthine, which is almost exactly the structure of a natural caffeine, having the same kind of results. It's a vasodilator, which means it relaxes blood vessels and breathing and muscle relaxant. So some people find it a headache relief. Some people find, isn't it like the hangover? We have a little bit of coffee and from the hangover, everything is about how it can help us. But I just thought, I watched Breaking Bad as one of my son's favorite shows. And not a big fan, I think, myself, but I just watched it recently. And I was interested because the meth he created was blue and it was this high percent. And it was interesting that when the chemists were first making synthetic caffeine, it had a blue hue to it. And they would wash it to get rid of the blue hue. I was kind of thinking that was interesting. So at the end of the day, I was most of our synthetic caffeine's coming from China. And a lot of the UK countries won't accept that type of synthetic caffeine. So I found that to be I have a lot more to learn about that. I have certainly never studied that at a level of the chemistry of creating it, just checking it out for this podcast. And I found that to be very interesting, maybe a little bit alarming for a moment. But ideally, when you see synthetic caffeine, it has been chemically made and it is something that will give you a bigger slam and then a bigger, quicker crash, not as stable as natural occurring caffeine for most people. So I'm thinking about this child with this cardiac arrest. If you think about a child that maybe got double the caffeine and maybe they were under the age of 12, I don't know the age, they say primary level. So I'm thinking a child, I'm not sure, maybe under the age of 12, and they get 400 milligrams of caffeine, and this synthetic caffeine, this gave them a cardiac episode. So if we think about the jitters that we get and we find that the heart starts to race, so think about what's too much. Have you felt when you've had too much Diet Coke or too much coffee?
Even today, I didn't sleep a lot, so I had more than my 2 cups of coffee over a course of a few hours. But I was I had to go eat something because I felt shaky.
And so there's definitely that amount. And that's what's individual, Donna. And that's what I've learned is that there's the right type that each person's body does better with. Are we the coffee drinker? Are we a tea drinker? What kind do we like? There's the matcha tea. There's so many different levels. But I find that most people have their favorite, or they're the Coke and they want the synthetic. And so I just find it interesting that the amount for me, if I had a half a cup of natural caffeine from coffee, I'm all jitters. I can't hardly touch the caffeine in coffee because it personally just makes me feel like I'm just racing and jitter. It's not a good feeling. And even a quarter of a cup. And so that's my body responding different. And synthetic caffeine, if I had a Diet Coke, I barely feel any effect from it. So I do want to stress the individual and response. And I think most people that feel a negative response probably tend to move to the one that they feel better with. So saying all of that, there is the type, there is the amount, and we have to consider them all. But I think at the end of the day, whatever type of caffeine that we're choosing, we do find health benefits to coffee and green tea. I've been looking for, are there studies that show and differentiate, are there health benefits to the caffeine in soda, the synthetic caffeine? And that's something that I'm going to explore further because it's not separated a whole lot. But if you look at there's a lot of study about having a cup of coffee, that soothing coffee and what it does. We actually see with caffeine from coffee and green tea, all these health benefits like the antioxidants, and we find like they live longer and they have less risk of heart disease, lower risk of diabetes, improving the liver, stronger DNA. I'm looking at this list that John Hopkins just published on the benefits of coffee, and very interesting that they're not saying caffeine. So the coffee is connected in so many studies with some really great health improvements until you cross the 400 milligrams a day. I really think that line might be different for each person, is how many milligrams that you can tolerate. But what's that maximum benefit? And what they're putting out is 400 milligrams for adults, 100 for children, 100 milligrams, children 12 to 18. So when I look at those health benefits, I'm thinking, I've got to start drinking coffee. Like there's some real benefits, and I'm not a big coffee drinker. I like more of the tea. And so I just have to throw in there that I created this superfood coffee. It's on the website, and we'll have to post it here to our show notes for the podcast on it. But I tried to take coffee and just boost the health benefit as much as I could and sort of do how can I make the healthiest coffee there is? And I took coffee and green tea and put it together. And I was trying to create this energy drink, but it was from natural caffeine. So there's a more stable energy, a stable level of energy to it, not the crash, and not have the sugar in it. Because I think it's what are we putting in our coffee, Donna? That's the concern. If we think about a Starbucks, pumpkin latte, or the cream and the sugar that we're not realizing is coming along, that we may want that caffeine. We may feel better from the coffee. It's got anti-inflammatory benefits, but what else are we adding to it? And so this superfood coffee that I created, I put cocoa in it, cinnamon in it. I was doing everything I could to create something that I would enjoy drinking. And I found something that I landed that I really loved, and it was filled with a lot of antioxidants. But I say that because when we're thinking about how we drink our coffee, how do we drink our tea, or our energy drinks, what's added? And that leads me to sugar, because sugar is like, it seems as though we want to take that caffeine and sugar just go hand in hand. It's the perfect hand in glove. And it seems to be that humans crave it. In whatever type of caffeine you like, we like to put a little sugar in our tea. How many people are drinking black coffee? I mean, there is a group out there that like it, but I think the majority are putting a little bit of sugar or a little bit of flavor or something in their coffee. So when I start looking at what's the sugar culprit, I started going down that road and thinking, how much sugar are we really putting? Like if you're looking at a teaspoon of sugar, the grams of sugar in a teaspoon. Do you know what that is, Donna? Have you ever, if you look at this has 10 grams of sugar. Do you know how many teaspoons that is?
I just don't even think about it. No. What is it?
So it's 5 grams. So if you have a teaspoon, so if you look at how much added sugar, look at the label of whatever you're looking at. And now with our new labels, I'm so happy that it just says added sugar. And all that is a true added sugar. Like if it's from fruit, it's in your total carbohydrate, but your actual added sugar now is the actual amount of sugar, refined sugar that's been added to this product. So that's the number we really want to look at. We want to look at the added sugar. So if I see 10 grams of added sugar, I have 2 teaspoons just for you to visualize what that is. So imagine pouring 2 teaspoons of sugar into that beverage, and that might be 8 ounces. So take your coffee and put 2 teaspoons of sugar. Or think about Starbucks when they're adding the flavorings, those that they have, the vanilla flavor, all those different
syrups, the
latte
pumps,
flavors,
the powders.
Yep. They're just straight sugar. And then the other is high fructose corn syrup. So now we're looking at the old sodas, like an old Coke would be a small portion, like 8 ounces. In the 60s and the 50s, these were smaller portions. Remember those cute little Coke?
So cute.
Yeah, I love them. People were full with 8 ounces when they used regular table sucrose sugar. But when we started shifting to high fructose corn syrup, that sort of blocks the need for insulin to be able to absorb it. And insulin's what shuts off hunger. So the perfect formula is to take high fructose corn syrup, and now we can create the big gulp, the great big portions. And we're not getting the hunger to turn off. You've had enough sugar now. You've had enough calories. There's no natural turn off with that. We've sort of chemically turned it off with high fructose corn syrup. So that's another type of sugar that's very concerning. And that's what's in soda. So when we look at soda and we look at a lot of our energy drinks, when they're coming from high fructose corn syrup, that's a whole nother issue that we can talk about at other times. But ultimately, sugar is really a negative health benefit. In fact, on the score, you're going to see that I'm looking at you earn a point for eating less refined sugar and high fructose corn syrup for sure, because you're not going to feel full. And I think it's really led to our obesity problem in our country and globally. If you're genetically inclined to have diabetes, I think these are the kinds of things that really throw blood sugar off and cause our insulin resistance problems, which leads us to heart disease. So sugar is really a refined sugar and high fructose corn syrup a problem in our country and in our food supply. So when I look at Mountain Dew is the highest sugar content, 65 grams of sugar in a 12-ounce can of Mountain Dew. And that's coming with caffeine as well. So Mountain Dew was really popular when I was in high school. I think that was our Red Bull of the day. I mean, it was Mountain Dew was a lot of sugar and a high in caffeine. And so as we go through the list, Coke's got 55 grams of sugar, and this is high fructose corn syrup. So as we look at what's happening with it, what I found with Red Bull, they've got 27 grams of sugar in an 8-ounce, the smaller Red Bulls that they have. But when you get up into their 20-ounce Red Bull, it's got 68 grams of sugar, which would be above Mountain Dew. And in that, they put on the label, I thought it was interesting, Donna, that it says it's the same sugar as a glass of apple juice. So they're connecting to your thinking that this high fructose corn syrup or this refined sugar that they use is no different than having a glass of apple juice. And when it comes to blood sugar, that could be true. But when it comes to turning off hunger, it isn't, because we will at least feel more full when we drink some of the apple juice, and we're at least getting some of the other health benefits with it. So I want to bring up something too that I found interesting as I was going down this road of looking at sugar and drinks and beverages and how we pair caffeine and sugar together so much in our sodas, in our coffee, in our tea, and just thinking about ways to hydrate with less sugar, and maybe think about ways to hydrate that some things don't have as much caffeine, and think about what's that maximum when you start to feel that jitter, step back a little bit, or think about what that's doing to your body. But there was a study from Harvard that just came out, and it was on over 100,000 women. They were over the age of 50. They followed them for 20 years. That's a pretty large amount of people. And they found 1 can of sugar soda raised their risk of liver cancer by 85%. And I was like thinking, this is a interesting connection between the liver health and cancer by just one can of soda. And so as I looked at that, I'm thinking that's high fructose corn syrup. Maybe there's something there. And was it a caffeine source? They didn't divide. It didn't seem to make a difference if it was caffeinated or not. So we definitely see in research the risk of sugar on diabetes. We see it on heart disease and obesity. But this is the first time I've really seen a lot and looked at the risk of liver cancer being an issue. And so as I was looking at that study, don't we think about liver as being damaged by alcohol? And it just sort of popped up that we're always thinking about alcoholic type liver disease. And to think that sugar, we're saying one serving of alcohol a day could be safe. And yet one serving of sugar is not. I just found that interesting. I wanted to have another episode completely about alcohol, but this one was a wake-up call to me today that I wanted to highlight that one can of soda, a sugar soda, may be more harmful than a serving of alcohol.
Wow.
And I found that to be interesting. And as I was looking at the pairing of caffeine and sugar, just kind of, that was my aha moment this week of just like, I don't think I've ever put those two together. But on the score, Donna, you'll see that meeting and not exceeding the requirement for alcohol gives us a point, but also these refined sugars are really, it's amazing how addicted we are to them and how sugar boosts us in a falsified way. We kind of feel this energy, almost like caffeine. And when you put that together, we sort of create, I just call it our legal form of cocaine for kids a little bit. And we seem to crave it. So just navigating hydration and what do we drink and what's healthy for us, and especially for our children, is a journey. And it's just something that I wanted to explore, and balancing flavor as well. Because, you know, I'm sitting here with my Fiji water here, and it's hard to put this up against, you know, when I'm looking at this packaging of the Prime energy drink and saying, oh, I'm going to show this to my 8-year-old, and which one are they going to pick up, you know? So maybe, Donna, we need to bottle up our water in these really cool drinks and, you know, get influencers to make a big deal about water. But I do think,
I mean, that's what you're saying actually is so interesting, because that's the company Liquid Death that took their canned, basically soda water. It's water. And they also have regular water. Sorry. They have regular non-bubbly, and then they do have the bubbly, but they took the packaging idea of Monster, of Red Bull, of Prime, and they put water in it because they know that we do judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
We do pick drinks, bottles of wine. Packaging matters.
yes, it
And
does.
they were smart doing that.
Yep. I just had a drink this week and I'd never had it before. Have you ever had Spindrift?
Yes, at Trader Joe's. They sell
Yeah,
it.
and I got some, I think I got it at Costco. I don't know, but we went on a houseboat vacation this summer and ended up just looking for some just drinks to take, and I chose that one. And that's just the sparkling water with a little spritz of fresh, like this is grapefruit juice. And that's going to get my win. It's delicious. And we don't have all of the refined sugars, but we get a little bit of flavor. And it's like, but it's packaged that there's no way that packaging, you know, if I'm going to just look at how it's labeled, I'd love to see that packaged really cool and get younger kids interested in it. But I definitely think that beverages in general, we need to see how we can make them be a moment. I hate saying that, but it's like people say, let's go have coffee or let's go have a drink. If we think it from alcohol to coffee to a Starbucks meetup, having these cool types of beverages have been part of our culture and fun and experience. They make moments. So I'm always saying, what's the glass you're serving? You know, they have this great mug for the milkshake or the beer. It's like, how can we do things that are super fun that make whatever we're drinking kick it up a notch and make it a moment. So I try to do that. I try to have like really neat glasses, and they're iced and they come out frothy, and I'm still pouring my Spindrift drink into it with, a fresh fruit garnish and things like that. I love the spa waters and I love all of that. But I do think that we need to not lose also that moment as of the experience and the moment, and make it fun. And how can we do that for us? Number one, as well as our children. And I think that's really the challenge, but really being aware. I think that's my goal, is for parents to be aware that there is a difference in the two Prime drinks, Prime Energy, Prime Hydration, Prime Hydration. I think it's a great option for a sports drink or a Gatorade. So I think it's great if your kids love it and they'll drink more. But when it comes to these energy drinks, they're concerning to me because they're not coming with, let's say, I'd rather have them have coffee or a green tea beverage if my kids are going to have a caffeine source, because it comes loaded with all the other antioxidants and all the other benefits. And then finding ways to sweeten it and flavor it without 2 teaspoons of sugar, like we talked about. Try to get that sugar down to the lowest level that you can. But this is one of the ways we can really take charge of our health, I think, is what we drink. We always think about what we're eating. And this is a good example of, let's look at what we're drinking, because we may be eating all these wonderful things, but what we're drinking could be the culprit. So let's turn what we drink most of the time into something that's super health promoting for us and our kids, and make it a moment. Let's label it good, or let's make it look good in how we serve it at home.
Have more fun with your drink. Spend some money on really cool, like the drink, if you're watching the YouTube, you'll see these cool bottles. They're like the Stanley mugs. This is the knockoff of that, but it keeps your water cold all day long. And I love making sure I can get through at least one in the morning. And that's another tip, just as a mom, for any moms out there right now. I bought my kids something I saw on TikTok, which is actually a water bottle, a refillable water bottle that gives you the hours of the day. Have you seen those? Where it's like by 7 a.m. you should be here at night.
I love
and
that.
Obviously it's so hard to like keep up. It's a big bottle.
Yeah.
But my son loves it because he feels almost like he's gamifying the process, right?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So you're right. Have fun with the vehicle in which you're drinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really my highlight of this whole week and getting ready for this podcast. I was really having fun with it and tasting different drinks, and it just got me to explore it with our whole family. We had a lot of fun with it, just looking at what do we all love and finding that for each person as well. So yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay. So
I'm a big Yeti fan.
Yes. The Yeti is great. It keeps it cold.
Everything.
Keeps it cold, keeps it hot. So if anyone is out there and is curious about Cheryl's superfood coffee recipe, we're going to have the link below in the show notes, and make sure to go and check it out. You might as well boost up that caffeine when you're drinking it. And if you have any of your favorite drinks or any of your favorite tips, make sure to leave a comment below or shoot Cheryl a DM on Instagram.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. This was such an informative episode. And yes, it's so important to keep an eye out on the beverages, not just the food.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. It was super neat to talk to you about it today, and always remembering that in the Dr. Cheryl membership that we talk a lot about different beverages, and we'll explore more recipes and things of beverages and ways that we can improve our health by what we eat and what we drink.
Yes, and that link is below as well to join Cheryl's membership, which is amazing and filled with so much info. Thanks, Cheryl. You have a great week, and we'll see you guys next week.
Okay, we'll see you, Donna, next week. Thanks for coming to the table, where every week we're going to talk about nutrition, longevity, and what it means to be well. If you would like to have your specific questions answered, become a member today to get access to our weekly private podcast, Ask Dr. Cheryl, where we will get to talk about wellness together. I can't wait to see you on the inside.